What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the 27th episode of the Huggy Poker Vlog. I'm Huggy, and this episode takes place at the biggest meetup game in Texas history at the Lodge in Round Rock, Texas. We run into a ton of poker vloggers, new, popular, upcoming, you name it. There were so many people there. We saw Brad Owen, we saw Andrew Neeme, we saw Doug Polk. We actually got to play with Doug Polk. We saw Rampage, Wolfgang, Close to Broke, Lex O, Sleeth, Brantzen, Bearded Poker. There were so many. There's others that I didn't even name. It was a crazy good time, lots of fun, lots of action. There were a ton of 2-5 games going, and we played in one of them. So this is the second time I played in a 2-5 game, and it's usually a match of the stack game at the Lodge, which I'm not a big fan of myself. I feel like it makes the stakes a lot higher than I'm ready and willing to jump into, so I'm actually glad that it was a capped game this time. So it was a $1,000 max. You couldn't buy in for more than that. Even if somebody had a $2,000 stack in front of them, you can't buy in for $2,000 like you would be able to at match the stack. So I was a little bit more comfortable in this. You know, I felt like we were all kind of on equal grounds, and I'm happy with that. So I might be in the minority there. I know there were some other people that wanted it to be match the stack. They wanted it to be straddled. You know, they wanted to play some bigger stakes, but for me, I was happy with the 2-5 stakes. So we got to play that. I bought in for $1,000, which was the max, and well, let's see how it went. 10 minutes in, we pick up ace-king suited on the button. The cutoff raises to 20, and I 3-bet to 65. The cutoff calls, so we're heads up to the flop, which comes 5-4 queen with 2 hearts. He checks to us, and I probably should c-bet here to be honest, but I took a weaker line and checked back. The turn brings the 5 of clubs pairing the board. Our opponent leads now for $75, and I decide to call once since it could definitely be a steal given my weak line on the flop. The river brings the 7 of hearts, which is not a great card. The flush and some straights get there, and some other straight draws pair up as well. When our opponent checks, I'm definitely checking back here, hoping that we're good. He shows us 9 high, and our hand is good.
Thank you.
The very next hand, we've got King-Jack offsuit in the cutoff. The under-the-gun player straddles to 10, and I make it 30. Just the straddle call, so we're heads up to the flop, which comes Jack-Ace-9 rainbow. He checks to me, and I c-bet for 30 with second pair. He folds, and we take down our second hand of the night. For the third hand in a row, we've got something playable, pocket jacks. We're short-handed with only 6 players at the table since we've had some churn right after sitting down. I raise it up to 15 under the gun, and the button 3-bets to 50. The big blind then cold calls. We've raised the last 2 hands and could definitely be getting played back at since we've been so active, but we've got a legitimate holding, so I'm going to put in the 4-bet. I make it 300 straight, a bit on the larger side, but given the interest, I don't want to get to a flop multi-way. After a bit of thinking, both players make the fold, and we take it down.
Nice.
5 minutes later, we've got ace-4 offsuit in the cutoff. The under-the-gun player straddles to 10, and I make it 30. The small blind 3-bets to 75, and I opt to defend since we're short-handed and we've got position, so I make the call. The flop comes down 7 queen 4 rainbow. He checks to us, and we've got bottom pair, but there's no reason to bluff since better hands won't fold to us here, so I check it back. The turn brings the 6 of spades, and now our opponent throws out a quarter. Since I interrupt our hand on the flop, I go ahead and make the call. The river bricks out with the 2 of clubs, and now it goes check-check. Our opponent says he's got ace high, I show our pair, and he mucks.
Thank you.
15 minutes later, we look down at pocket 9s in the +1 position. I raise to 15, and just the small blind calls. The flop comes ace-9 king with 2 spades, so we flop bottom set. The small blind checks, and I c-bet for 20. He calls pretty quickly, and we're headed to the turn where we see the queen of spades. It's a pretty ugly turn card, though. I think we're still off and ahead, but some straights and flushes do get there now. When he checks to us again, I'm still going to keep applying the pressure, making it $40. We get another call, and we're headed to the river, which is the 8 of hearts. This card shouldn't change anything. We're still ahead of pair and 2-pair hands, and we're still behind any straights or flushes, which probably would have raised on the turn. He checks again, so I make it 80, which is hopefully small enough to warrant a call. He does make the call, I show our set, and it's good.
Thank you.
Just 3 hands later, we've got queen 9 suited in hearts. The under the gun player straddles to 10, the button raises to 30, and I call from the small blind. Everyone else ends up folding, so we're heads up to the flop, which comes ace-8-9 rainbow. We flop second pair, but obviously the ace on the board is a bit scary given the pre-flop raise. I check to our opponent, who c-bets for 35. I call with the intention of reevaluating on the turn, which brings the deuce of clubs, not changing anything. I check again, and he bets once more, making it 80 this time. There aren't too many draws out there, so I think it's safe to give the button credit for a better hand, and I let this one go. The very next hand, we've got ace-jack offsuit on the button. The hijack raises to 15, and I 3-bet to 50. Everyone folds, and we take it down without a flop.
Brad Owen and
Nice.
Andrew Neeme said, hey, we're...
A couple hands later, we've got King 4 suited and diamonds in the hijack. The +2 player raises to 20, and I make a loose call in position. The big blind calls as well, so we've got 3 plays of the flop, which comes King 9-7 with 2 hearts. The big blind checks to the pre-flop raiser, who c-bets for 35. I've got to call once with top pair, even though our kicker's bad. The big blind eventually decides to call as well, so we're all headed to the turn, which bricks out with the deuce of spades. It checks to the pre-flop raiser, who bets again, making it 110 this time. In retrospect, this is a pretty easy fold given that he's betting hard into 2 opponents, but at the time, I was being pretty sticky in a lot of hands, and I decided to call once more. The big blind ends up calling as well, and now I'm for sure giving up unimproved. The river brings the 8 of diamonds, which shouldn't change anything, as all the draws missed, and now we all check around. The pre-flop raiser shows King Queen for top pair with a better kicker as expected, and we muck. 4 hands later, we've got Ace 9 suited in the small blind. There's an under the gun straddle to 10, and the +1 player raises to 25. I call and the straddle calls, so the 3 of us head to the flop, which comes Deuce Queen Ace Rainbow. We both check to the pre-flop raiser, who makes a pretty weak c-bet for 25. I considered raising to isolate at the time, but I didn't want to get called with just a middling ace and have to play the rest of the hand out of position, so I opted just to call, and the straddler ends up calling as well. The turn brings the King of Diamonds, which is not the best card to see since 10 Jack gets there, and we're still behind any bigger ace. I check once more, and it ends up checking through, so we all get a free river, which is the 8 of hearts. Given that it checked through on the turn, I think we're probably good here a lot of the time, and I lead for 50. Both players end up folding, so we take it down.
Thank you.
10 minutes later, I got talked into doing a 10-20-40 straddle, so we're in for $20 in the +1 position. We get a pretty nice hand for the spot, picking up Ace-10 off. The middle position player goes all in for his last 62, and when it folds back to me, I raise it up to 200, which does get the other straddle to fold.
Heads up.
Yeah,
Hottest hand in the game. Nice.
yeah, alright, it's a flip, it's a flip.
It's got a club, no
Sorry, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Another 10 minutes pass when we pick up Ace-4 offsuit in the big blind. The under the gun player raises to 15, and I call to defend heads up. The flop comes 3-8-6, all diamonds. I check, and he c-bets for $15. We've got the nut flush draw, but ace-high alone might be good, and given how aggressive I've been playing tonight, along with some table talk about my aggressiveness, I expect that this player will think that I'm check-raising light or with a draw, and be sticky if I do so I opt just to call here. The turn brings the 9 of spades. Our hand doesn't improve, and I check to our opponent, who now decides to check back. The river brings the ace of hearts, so we miss our flush, but we do pick up a pair. I check once more with the intention of calling a bet, and when our opponent makes it 40, I do just that. We get shown ace-jack, so we're out-kicked, and I muck. 2 hands later, we've got 9-7 offsuit on the button. The middle position player raises to 15, and I'm the only caller, so we're going heads up to the flop, which comes 7-deuce-8 with 2 clubs. He c-bets for 25, and this board is definitely in favor of my range over his, so I go ahead and call with second pair. The turn brings the 8 of clubs, pairing the board. He c-bets again for 50. This card shouldn't help him, so I imagine he's either posturing or has an overpair at this point. I decide to go the aggressive route, which in retrospect I don't really like, but at the time I raised it to 175. After a lot of thinking, he eventually calls, so I'm assuming he's definitely got an overpair or flush draw himself. The river brings the jack of clubs, so we hit the flush, and now our opponent checks to us. I'm happy to check it back and go to showdown given his interest in the hand.
Nice hand.
It's pretty clear we needed to improve on the river, and we got there.
Thank you.
Thank you. One's good.
The very next hand, we've got 5-3 suited in spades in the cutoff. It folds to me, and I raise to 15. Just the big blind calls, so we're heads up to the flop, which comes 10-5-7 with 2 hearts. We flop bottom pair, and when our opponent checks to us, I c-bet for 20. He quickly calls, and we get a dream turn of the 5 of diamonds. He checks again, and I scale up the bet a bit, making it 50. He calls quicker now than he did on the flop, and can you believe it, the river gives us a boat when it comes the 3 of hearts. He checks to us the third time, and I'm really hoping he was on the flush draw given the action. At the time, I thought he had about 250 behind, though I think it's actually closer to 400. Given how aggressive I've been, I decided to keep up with that line, ripping it all in, hoping for a call. After a good 30 seconds of deliberation, he eventually folds. Unfortunately, the bet was too large, and if I'd realized how many chips he actually had behind, I would have bet closer to 200 instead. 2 hands later, we've got ace-king offsuit in the +1 position. I raised to 15, the cutoff calls, the button calls, and the small blind 3-bets to 65. The big blind folds, and I re-raised to 350 given the wide amount of interest. It folds back to the button, who goes all in for around 400 total. The small blind folds, and I call for 50 more.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a nice hand. Good, nice one. Drawn pretty slim here. Nice hand.
Thank you.
10 minutes later, we've got a no-limit holdem double board bomb pot. Everyone pays $15, and we all go straight to the flop. We're dealt ace-7 offsuit under the gun. We've got 7 players to the flop. The flop comes 4 ace-queen rainbow on top and queen 5-4 with 2 clubs on bottom. I check, and the +1 player leads for 35. It folds all the way back around to me, and I decide to call here with top pair on the top board. The dealer calls out that the bet was actually 45, which I might have been more reluctant to call had I known, but there's no backing out now, so I throw in the extra $10. The turn brings the 7 of spades on top and the 10 of clubs on bottom, so we pick up 2 pair now on the top board. I check again, and our opponent makes it 120 now. It's a really strong bet, and I feel like he's probably posturing for the bottom board with a flush. If that's true, then I'm really only behind on the top board if he's got ace-queen of clubs. I decide to call again to see what happens on the river. It's a pretty iffy spot to be in since we're really just playing for a chop heads up. The river brings the 9 of spades and the 8 of diamonds. I check once more, and he goes all in. The river doesn't help us, and now the backdoor flush has come in on the top board. The fact that the flush has come in shouldn't change anything though. If he's going for the bottom board, this card is irrelevant, and if he's going for the top board, then we've been behind the whole way. I deliberate for a solid minute, thinking that if I call, it's either for a chop or my entire stack. But screw it. I came to have fun, and if I was going to fold, I should have done it on the turn, so I throw in a chip to make the call. Our opponent shows the ace of clubs, giving me a bit of a scare, followed by the jack of clubs, meaning our 2 pairs good on the top board. We chop the pot and effectively win $52 each from all that action. 15 minutes later, we look down at a pair of black deuces in the +1 position. I raise to 15, the middle position player calls, and the cutoff re-raises to 75. I say screw it and make the call. The middle position player folds, and I check dark to a flop of 10 ace deuce rainbow, so we flop bottom set. I check to our opponent, who c-bets for 60. I deliberate between a call and a raise, but given the fact that he's c-betting with an ace on the flop, I feel like there are some ace-x hands that would be willing to call a raise here. I ultimately decide to go with a raise, making it $200. Unfortunately, he must have had an underpair to the ace as he lays it down, and we take the pot.
All right. In that case, you're good.
I get it.
In the next orbit, we've got ace-5 suited in clubs in the hijack. It folds to me, and I raise to 15. Just the big blind calls, so we're heads up to the flop, which comes deuce 5-3 with 2 diamonds. We flop top pair, and when he checks to me, I c-bet for 20. He makes the call, and we're headed to the turn, which brings the 4 of hearts. He checks again, and with 4 to a straight on the board, any ace or 6 is ahead here. Given that I've raised pre-flop, an ace should be in my range more often than it's in his. For that reason, I decide to c-bet again for $30 in hopes of getting a fold. He unfortunately makes the call, so we get to see a pretty interesting river of the 6 of clubs, putting us straight on the board. Our opponent checks once more, and there's no way he's checking here with a better straight, so I decide to throw out a bet, hoping for a fold. I don't think I made it nearly as big as I should have, though, throwing out $50. We get a quick call, and
Quit chopping, right?
It wouldn't have been if it was a diamond.
Yeah. I had you till the river.
6 of diamonds would have been nasty.
3 hands later, we pick up pocket 10s under the gun. I raise to 15, and just the middle position player calls, so we're heads up to the flop. The flop comes 4-8-5 rainbow. I c-bet for 25, and our opponent calls. The turn brings the 5 of hearts. Given the way this guy's been playing, I suspect that if we check here, he'll take the lead on the hand with a bet. I decide to go ahead and check with the intention of check raising, and he makes a bet of 40. I stick with the plan and raise to 180. After almost a minute, he eventually folds, and we take it down.
I want my 5-4 offsuit back.
Thanks.
10 minutes later, we pick up king-queen offsuit in the cutoff. It folds to me, and I raise to 15. The button, who's a pretty new player to the table and has been pretty aggressively 3-betting pretty frequently, makes it 50. It folds back to me, and I decide to call given how aggressive he's been. The flop comes deuce 9 jack with 2 diamonds. I check, and he c-bets for 40. We've got a gut shot, 2 overs, and a decent backdoor flush draw, so I go ahead and call. The turn brings the 5 of spades, which doesn't change anything, and I check once more. He bets again for 60 this time. I think any king, queen, or 10 are legitimate outs, and I'm also considering that if a diamond falls, I could make a move for the pot as a bluff, which would effectively be 9 more outs, 19 in all. We're getting a pretty good price for that many outs, assuming a bluff would work out in the last scenario. With that, I make the call. The river brings the 7 of diamonds, so the flush draw comes in, and I go ahead and make a play for the pot, betting $200. Our opponent goes into the tank. He actually looks like he's on the verge of folding for a bit, but then counts out calling chips and starts playing with them. Obviously, we're hoping for a fold, and after a lot of thinking, he calls. I show our hand, and he shows ace-9 offsuit for second pair, beating our king high. 20 minutes later, we've got ace-king offsuit again under the gun. I raise to 15, and both the cutoff and big blind make the call, so the 3 of us head to the flop, which comes jack-king deuce with 2 hearts. I c-bet for 30, and just the cutoff calls, so we're heads up to the turn, which brings the 6 of spades. This shouldn't change anything. We're really only worried about king-jack or pocket deuces. I bet again, making it $65. We get called once more, and I'm pretty sure the only hands I'm worried about would have raised here, so I'm confident our hand is good at this point. The river brings the 6 of clubs, pairing the board. This is a really good card since no draws came in, and there are virtually no hands our opponent has holding a 6. I bet once more, making it $150.
I flopped the world and missed it all.
Yeah, straight flush draw.
Flush and straight.
Nice.
The very next hand, we've got 6-5 offsuit on the button. The hijack raises to 15, it folds to me, and I call to defend. The flop comes deuce 6-10 rainbow. I checked our opponent, he c-bets for 15, and I call with second pair. The turn brings a miracle 6 of diamonds, so we pick up trips. I check again, and he bets once more for 35 this time. I want to get more money in the pot, so I raise it up to 135. We get a really quick call, and I feel like given the action, he's probably got top pair at worst, but more likely an overpair. The river brings the 9 of hearts, which shouldn't change anything, and now I want to get max value. I push all in for 350 effective with our opponent covered. This guy goes into the tank for a solid 2 minutes. He's clearly torn on what to do, and I think my read of an overpair was accurate. Finally, after a long wait, he folds, showing pocket jacks. I show him the 5 and tell him to check out the vlog to see what I had. So if you're watching, I had a great time playing with you, and you made a great fold that I probably wouldn't have been able to make myself, so well played. A few minutes later, we've got king-jack offsuit in the hijack. It folds to me, and I raise to 15. The button and big blind both call, so the 3 of us head to the flop, which comes 8-10-10 rainbow. I'm not expecting to get any folds given how aggressive I've been, so when it checks to me, I check back, and the button does the same. The turn brings the king of hearts, so we pick up top pair now, but I decide on a check again, figuring that I'm probably either way ahead or way behind at this point. The button opens for 25, and we're the only caller, so we're heads up to the river where we see the 9 of diamonds, which does bring in the straight draw for queen jack. I check again, expecting this player to continue barreling, and he makes it 125. I call quickly since we've under-repped our hand, and
I do too. I do.
Three hands later, we've got 10-8 suited in the big blind. It folds to the button who raises to 15, and the small blind 3-bets to 55. I feel like a 4-bet will look really strong here, so I raise it up to 225. The button snap folds, and the small blind doesn't think too long before making the fold as well, so our play works. A couple hands later, we pick up king-queen suited and spades on the button. The cutoff raises to $20, and I consider 3-betting, but I ultimately decide to flat call to mix up my play, considering I'm in position as well. The flop comes 6-ace-8 with 2 spades. He c-bets for 20, and this is a pretty easy call with the nut flush draw. The turn brings the 3 of hearts. He checks now, and I consider betting as a semi-bluff, but if he's got an ace, I'd rather take the free card instead, so I opt just to check behind. The river brings the jack of diamonds, so we miss completely, and our opponent checks again. Given the action, our hand might actually be good, so I opt just to check here to get to showdown. King high.
Same. I probably got you out kicked then.
10 minutes later, we've got pocket 7s under the gun. I raise to $15, and the cutoff re-raises to 50. The blinds fold, and I opt to call here, so we're heads up to the flop, which comes 6-8-6 with 2 spades. This is not too bad a flop for us. Our pair could be best. I check, and our opponent checks back. I've been pretty sticky tonight, and I think if he had an overpair, he'd bet to get some money in the pot. For that reason, I feel like we're probably ahead. The turn brings the 4 of diamonds, which shouldn't change anything. Given our opponent's check on the flop, I think betting here will just get him to fold air, and if he is ahead, we'll just be bloating the pot from behind. I decide to check and give him a chance to motion for the pot, which he does. He makes it 40, and I quickly call. The river brings the queen of diamonds, which isn't the best card for us. Our opponent's hand probably has some kind of paint in it, plus it brings in the backdoor flush when he just bet on the turn. I check once more, and after thinking for a bit, he decides on a check.
Got a pair.
Our opponent mucks, and we scoop another one. 10 minutes later, we've got pocket jacks again. I raise to 15 under the gun, and the cutoff re-raises to 45. This is the same player who 3-bet me the last time I had jiggities, and I 4-bet him then as well. I stick with the aggression, making it 225 out of position. I think my bets may be a bit too big, but I'm still getting used to these stakes to be perfectly honest. He doesn't think too long before making the fold, and we take it down.
Same hand as last time.
Another 10 minutes pass, and we pick up 10-9 suited and clubs on the button. The hijack raises to 20, the cutoff calls, and I 3-bet to 80. The big blind pushes all in for 440 total. It folds back to me, and given the action I've seen from this player tonight, we're probably behind unless he has a hand like 8s or 7s, though I do think his range is wide and could include some hands like weaker aces. Normally I'd fold, but hey, it's a meetup game, and I came to have some fun tonight. Plus, I think if I call, he'll be up for running it twice, so screw it.
Let's do it. You want to do anything? Yeah, sure. No, I don't think so. No, I think you're probably ahead. Show it? Yeah, oh, you got me dominated.
Are you guys running it twice from the
all the way, yeah. Yeah.
You went all in against me with that hand.
I did? I'll put a queen out there. Or an 8. Oh. Those were all my outs.
Yeah, I was like, we burned a few too many cards.
I know.
Yeah.
That's the 8. 8's on the wrong board. Nice hand.
So we lose a pretty big one, but hey, it's in the name of fun for the meetup game, and I don't feel too bad about it. About 15 minutes later, we pick up ace-8 suited and clubs in the cutoff. It folds to me, and I raise to 15. The big blind, who's the same player I lost that last big hand to, 3-bets to 55. I call, and we're heads up to a pretty great flop of 8 ace-3 with 2 diamonds. So we flop top 2 pair against a player who's shown some interest in the hand already. He checks to us after his pre-flop 3-bet, and this player has shown that he doesn't believe my aggression, so I make a fairly sizable bet of 75. He insta-calls, and we're headed to the turn, which brings the 6 of spades. He checks again, and I expect our hand should still be ahead here. Given his call on the flop, I'm hoping that he's got a big ace that can't fold, or a big pocket pair that doesn't believe us given our aggression throughout the session, and I decide to rip it in for 499 total. He almost beats us into the pot, and we see we're up against a worse 2 pair that got there on the turn.
3 times?
You want to do twice? I'll do twice if you want.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. That was
There's
lucky turn there.
all these pictures in this place.
The very next hand, we've got pocket 10s in the +1 position. I raise to 15 and just the button call, so we're heads up to the flop, which comes 7-8-6 rainbow. I lead for 25 with our gut shot and overpair, and we get a pretty quick call. The turn brings the 7 of spades. We're probably still ahead, but I think I get more info out of checking here, so I check and the button ends up checking back. The river blanks out with the deuce of spades, and given our opponent's check back on the turn, I feel like he's either got a pair with some showdown value or a draw that's missed. I don't expect this particular player to bluff if I check, so I bet out for 75 hoping for a call. Unfortunately, he ends up making the fold, but we do take it down. I started recording this hand late since my camera's battery is about to die, and I wasn't expecting to be able to record anymore. However, I managed to sneak this last one in under the wire. Doug Polk, who's just joined our table, straddles for $10 under the gun, and it folds around to me. I raise it up to 40 in the small blind, and the big blind quickly 3-bets to 125. Doug, who's clearly distracted by his massage, is caught off guard by the action.
Really? That much?
125.
You just hate to see it.
That was mine.
Oh,
It's right here, yes. Yeah.
It's making more sense. I looked over, I see this pile and your cards. I'm like, you want my 10 that bad?
Doug folds, and it's back on me. The big blind's been very aggressively making a number of 3-bets, and I'm sure we're ahead of his range. He's pretty sticky though, and I don't really want to have to play a big pot out of position, so I'm hoping we can just make a big raise and get a fold. I make it 375, and after some thinking, the big blind does make the call. I already know this is going to be a big pot, and I'm hoping we hit the flop when it comes 3-4-3 rainbow. We miss completely, but it's not the worst flop for our 4-betting range. Hopefully our opponent doesn't have anything and can fold to a bet. I c-bet for 200, and we get insta-called. I'm not surprised. Like I said, this opponent is pretty sticky. The turn brings the queen of diamonds. We don't improve, and even worse, there are some hands we're up against like ace-queen, king-queen, or queen-jack that get there now. I still think there's a chance our opponent has air given his 3-betting range, or perhaps a lower pair that we can get the fold with pressure. With that, I'm ready to get it in here. I push all in for $6.99 total, and our opponent points to our chips asking for a count. Not a great sign. I push the chips forward so he can see without giving any other indication of hopes of not giving anything away. As soon as I push the chip stack out there, he folds. Whew. We take this big pot down right before my phone dies.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, my phone died right after that last hand with the ace-king, so that put our stack at $1,856, and we still played for a little bit longer after that. The table eventually died down, and after buying in for $1K, we cashed out for $2,105 for a win of a little over $1,100, so feel pretty good about that. All in all, the meetup game was a huge success. We met a lot of interesting people, met a lot of big vloggers and little vloggers alike, and we just got to have a good time all around. We played some cash games. I tried out the tournament, the free roll they had that night. Busted out of that pretty quick, but that's okay. Still came out ahead from the cash game win. And lastly, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to FOMO Poker Co. They sent me a couple of shirts just for the heck of it. Thought that was a nice thing of them to do. So you'll probably see me wearing those around when I play. That's it for this week. Really appreciate you watching. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit the like and subscribe button, leave a comment, and I'll get back to you as always. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next one. Take care.